all. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the opening event of the Sojourn NYC Festival of Books and Roses. Um, this festival is co-organized by the Farragut Fund for Catalan Culture in the United States and the Catalan Institute of America. Catalan Institute, which used to be called Friends of Catalonia, which is a nice name, has been organizing St. George's for over 100 years. But in 2014, the president of the organization said, I think we should be trying to reach beyond the Catalan community. And we got together and decided that the way to reach beyond the Catalan community in New York was to devote the festival to literature and translation. And because in America, we were on the panel, the translation committee for PEN America, we were able to draw in translators from many languages. So the festival has been growing. We started out with a little polygonal going from one bookstore to the next, like the Bikepackers of Hamlet. And now, last year, thanks to a partnership with the West Village Business Improvement District, we have found a home in the village. And this was very important because the festival that we are mirroring is a street festival. All of the boulevards of Barcelona fill up with book stands and flower stalls, and people give one another books and roses. So on Saturday, we will be having a street festival on Christopher Street between 7th and Waverly. And you're all invited, and it's really fun. It's very sweet. It will be running from 12 to 5. St. George, somebody asked me, St. George, or San Jordi is St. George. He's a patron saint of Catalonia. And if in the United States, he would be known as the Dragon Slayer. Well, all over he's known as the Dragon Slayer. The legend of St. George is that he killed the dragon to save either a damsel in distress or the princess in a town that was being sacked by the dragon. We have a soft spot for the dragon in St. George, so we kind of like the Uccello version where they kind of knock him out and lead him off with the princess's garter. But anyway, that's the story of St. George, and that's who inspires the festival. So our first event is titled Tender Gestures Carved in Stone, and it's a celebration of French Senegalese poetry. I will tell you, but I wanted to tell you a bit. We have called the event Colonial, Post-Colonial, and Neo-Colonial Threads because there are two events this evening, and we're dealing with two authors and two texts who on the surface are very different, but whose work is informed by the relationship between the colony and the metropolis. So, Tender Gestures Carved in Stone was chosen by C.B. Condé, who is the author of the poetry book that Nancy Naomi Carson has translated, called Gestuary. And CB has three collections of poetry published by Gallimard. La Ronde La Vue, Tableau de Mémoire, I'm sorry about the French, which was postfaced by Edouard Glissant. I wish you would tell us a little bit about that. And the La Quête Infinie de l'Autre Rive, I should ask you to say those, which received the 2017 Prix Lucien Gracia Vincent, and Gestuaire of 2016, which received the Prix Louis Labbé. And you also have a teaching award from NYU. I have a teaching award from NYU. One of the things I'm most proud of. So, SUV is a wonderful poet. I've been able to read these poems, and I look forward to hearing the conversation with Nancy, who is a poet, essayist, and translator. She will be taking part in the Us and Them series, which is for writer translators, and they'll have an event at Molasses Bookstore when?
July 24th.
I met Todd Portnowitz, yes, at an Us and Them event that we organized actually at the KGB bar some years ago, which was a lot of fun too, and of course a great page. Nancy's translation of Kyle Torawoli's Cargo Hold of Stars, Coolitude, from Seagull Books. This book is also from Seagull. Won the Oxford Weidenfeld Translation Prize. Nancy is the author of 5 titles and a translator of 12 others, and her poetry and translations have been noted in the New York Times. She is a 2-time recipient of translation fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and has many more awards. The moderator, Beth S. Gershnesich, is an art historian and the director of the New York Arts Exchange, and she writes about art for Bonjour Paris. Her most recent books are translations of Jacqueline Gojard's. In these days when we don't have printers, Pablo Picasso and André Salmon, The Painter, the Poet, and the Portraits, and then from 2019, and the 2022 book, Pablo Picasso, André Salmon, and Young French Painting, prefaced by Jacqueline Gojard, etc. So, I'm very happy to introduce the 3 of them, and I leave it in your hands, Beth.
Oh, thank you for coming. All of you, we are so happy to see you. And we wanted to know how many of you have read the Sylvie Condé's poetry. Anyone? Lovely. And Nancy Naomi Carlson's poetry. I read both. Okay. Welcome to us. And I want to say, Marianne Newman, you are amazing. Thank you so much for inviting us, and we're the kickoff, so we feel very honored for that. Thank you so much. And Ignacio Garcia Botella. Thank you for everything, because setting up the tech is so scary. All right, we are going to start now that Marianne gave such great introductions. So the PowerPoint has just the introductions very quickly. I want to thank Nancy, and I want to thank you for inviting me to be in this illustrious company. So here we are, this beautiful book. And you heard all of the accolades about Sylvie Condé. She teaches at Old Westbury at SUNY. And these are the books that are beautiful covers for the this is the book, for the never-ending quest, for the other side, for the other shore, and that became 3 cantos, and that was translated by Alexander Dickau, who's also a friend of mine. And this is the German cover of that. And this is the cover of Distress in German, which is actually translated as Silent Exchange. Right? So this is an international book. It's really exciting. And Nancy is a poet, essayist, and translator. She's also one of the translation committee members, and she is the co-chair right now. And so it's amazing job there. And you had already mentioned all of these, so we don't want to spend too much time, my friends, because we do want to hear the poems, the most important part. And this is me, and I am a translator too. That's how we know each other. And these are the 2 books that I translated, so I'm legit. Now, the most important part. Tell us, please, and now, tell us, please, Sylvie, tell us about your book. What is it that we should know?
Okay, thank you very much, Marianne, for your kind words and your generous appreciation of my work. I'm delighted to be here to be part of the St. Jordi Festival in conversation with Nancy and Beth. Thank you all for being here. So I think we should be highly critical of the writer's intent. So I may not be the best person to say what the book is about. However, I will try. And as far as I recall, my initial interest was for gestures in hip-hop culture. And I was particularly interested in trying to find out if there was an African dimension in the gestures used by hip hop artists. Eventually, nothing came out of this research, no poem, but I was fascinated by the notion that gestures are a language. And with that in mind, I began revisiting some of the gestures that were salient in my imagination. Gestures, some of them were violent, some of them were tender, some of them were personal, intimate, others of historical importance. So I was also interested in the way gestures circulate, and in a way in the biography of gestures, just like other scholars have been interested in the biography of things. And so gestury is a repertory of poems about gestures, of various imports. Some of the poems are actually meta poems, describing the process by which gestures are talked about, described, celebrated, and their complex relationship to verbal expression. So that's what I think the book is about. Now, just like any other poetry book, this is a book about writing poetry. And you know the abilities of language to blur temporalities, to bring about what is not visible, to create memory. And I think that today poetry has a hardest task to do, because it seems to me that we witness the proliferation of profanities in the public sphere. So it seems to me that poetry is here. It's not its mission, but its effect to warn us about not only the Orwellian newspeak, but also about the various manners of profanation visited upon language.
Thank you. This is wonderful. And now I want to know, Nancy, how did you find this book? How did you discover it?
So I discovered Sylvie, not I discovered Sylvie, she was already discovered, but I discovered her work and through a mutual friend. So all these degrees of connection with people, and I was working with a co-translator for something else, and she happens to be the wife of my ex-husband. So we have been working together on different projects, and it turned out that her professor at the Sorbonne, because when she started working with me, she decided to become a translator. She wasn't one before, she just was a native speaker of French. So she went to the Sorbonne, and she had a professor, Patrick Williamson, and it turned out that Patrick was the author of this wonderful anthology, The Parlay Tree, that I had read, and then a second anthology where Sylvie was part of it. And after we got all that sorted about who knew what, and therefore, and then I had asked Patrick about really wonderful, brilliant writers from his neck of the woods where he studies poets from, and so from Senegal, and I had not translated anyone from who had roots in Senegalese culture, French Senegalese, and so I looked at the work that was in that anthology, and I said, "Well, can you introduce us?" And he did, and then I had read J'espère in French, which is something I don't normally do because I like to surprise myself when I translate books. So I like to see the poems unfold, but I quickly gave it a reading just to see it. I just was thrilled to see this idea of language as gesture, or gesture as language, I guess is more accurate. And I love the fact that her work is lyrical. I specialize in looking for the music of the original and bringing that into English. I loved the idea that I look for poets like Puriti from Kalatola Rivi talking about indentured workers. I look for work that is, I like to say, an act of social justice. I'm doing my small part, bringing this into English for an Anglophone audience. And so that really sealed the deal for me. There are poems about the post-colonial trauma, and there are poems about the slave trade here, but they're made into gestures, theater, kinds of different gestures. So I just really knew that this was a book that I wanted to translate.
What's really interesting, and listening to both of you now, before you answering your questions, is that I know Cindy, you also translate, your sense of process, okay? Your sense of, to me, because this is important to me, I translate something dead and I translate something with alive. So I was wondering, what is the process? What is your relationship when you're translating Cindy's work? Do you check in with each other? You usually said you're not the person to look at a whole work and decide in advance. Can you tell us a little bit, what was your approach with TV and what was the reaction?
So, as a translator, yes, for me, I get it right. And I want to know what is in the mind of the author. And I translated dead people. I translated the Lanisha.
Yeah.
And he's not there to tell me what he meant when he has these surrealistic images, one layered upon the other, no way to tell. But even if you don't have that going on, there's still words have many meanings, and you don't know which is the meaning that is intended. And I don't subscribe to the theory, well, let the reader decide. I'm the writer, I put it down there, and we'll just send it out there. I feel as a poet myself that I have a meaning that I am putting down there. So it's just invaluable to be able to ask Cynthia. In the beginning, I tried to do most of it myself in the first few poems, and then I'd say to her, so, what's the background of what brought this poem into existence? And then I learned about the inspirations that I could see when she had told me, and then it made me better translate the poems, knowing where that inspiration was coming from. So she was very generous with her time, and in the beginning, I would try not to bother her too much, and I would just check in with her about various words or lines, and she would get back to me. And towards the end of the book, when we had a deadline for Seagull, we had to get it done, and we had to. And then there was a new poem that was here too. That wasn't the book that we had there, and so we both really wanted to make that deadline. So I would say to her, okay, before I even start, where did this poem come from? So I would know, and that would help me with my word choices and anything that was a little, where there were possibilities for taking it a different way. Then I would just check it out with her. And then I learned all about the, not so sharp on customs in parts of Senegal culture. There were elements of oral culture and practices there. And this is not what Sydney grew up with, participating in, but knowledgeable because it was happening in that country. And so she was able to say, well, this is what we do, that it's thought, not we do, but it's thought that everybody has a double, and the double lives in the waters, and with the dead, the interrogation of the dead, about how they died, especially if they died when something was a little fishy. And so there's a little theater between the clairvoyant and the deceased person talking to one another too. And so that process, and then of course at the end, because Cynthia never said, I don't think you ever said, it's got to be this way. you can tell, I can tell if you were thinking it's gotta be this way, why is she thinking this? But, not really. You would say, you suggest things, and if I was totally wrong, she would tell me. And then I would show her the final product and the final poem, and then she would say usually, oh, this is wonderful. Then when we got the galleys, of course, we made like hundreds of edits for both of us, seeing things that we hadn't before in the translation. So it's a very arduous process. And for me, and the last thing I'll mention is I sound map everything. I choose poets who pay attention to the sonic texture of their work as they write it. And so for me, when I have the original, I use different colors to have, all the times there are these sounds, like the or the or the which don't exist in English, and then sounds that do exist in English. And I have different colors for different sounds and get that pattern to see how richly sonic it is, and then go with my English and make sure not the same sounds. They don't exist across languages all the time, but make sure that I honor the music in a way that someone reading my text hears the music and goes, oh, these texts are richly music. And that takes a long time. So between back and forth and the mapping and finding the meaning and not straying from the meaning, even though I want the sounds there. I think that Sydney was very kind to listen to my, no, I can't have 4 unstressed syllables here in the English, even though that's what it means, and I need to make it. Or
Thank you. Working with Nancy was a delight, and she was never wrong. And no, I think that poem is an open entity. It is never finished as long as it is not read. And Nancy is a very astute interpreter. And I think that once I contextualized the poem, she was saying, "What's the story? What's the story?" So once I contextualized the poem and sort of clarified some of the principles I decided on in terms of the punctuation or the lack thereof. My interventions just were confined to rereading and rediscussing, and possibly also sometimes clarifying polysemic words. For instance, a word like retourner, I use it in the collection with various meanings, so it can mean having returned, or it can mean upset. And obviously that changes the sense of the whole poem. But there's no way of knowing if I do not specify which sense the poem uses. So what was wonderful was that once I read out loud, and because my poems are written to be read out loud, once I read Nancy's translations, I could hear the poem as it was conceived in written in French and transposed into English, and there I was sure that things were there. I really appreciated your way of using a sonic map because I pay a lot of attention to alliteration, alliterations and assonances. I tend to sort of not necessarily use rhymes, but I pay attention to alliterations and assonances. And Nancy really saw that and reproduced it. So there was not much lost in translation, and I really enjoyed just reading the poems in English. I mean that feeling that they convey what I had meant for them to be.
Yes, exactly. That's what we're going to do now. And it's your job as listeners and readers to notice the words Nancy decided to keep that are French. Right? Okay, so pay attention. Can I put the lights down a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we were going to talk about ekphrasis, but ekphrasis is when the artist looks at a work of art and makes a work of art from that work of art. And so the first poem is about Ben Corre. Those of you who took our history, you remember this is one of the best known Old Kingdom Egyptian works, which is of great significance. And what Sylvia has decided to do is attend to the gesture of the queen. Here we go, in French.
Pharaon. Ce geste lapidaire, courant du rein du dieu à la plaine où son nombril est offert à la soif des foules et des faunes. C'est vous qui l'initiez, beauté qui vient, dame des dunes, à la grave paupière. Rien ne l'érodera, rien n'a pu l'éroder, cette pose féconde dans un basalte coulé, peut-être bien grès, à l'image de vous, madame, qui, amante, sœur, idée, déesse, enclamez au désert la toute-puissance et l'éclat. À l'image de vous, disais-je, et de celui qui vous ressemble, vous l'épaulez, un pied en retrait, comme pour l'aider à porter du renom la pesante lumière. Vous épousez de son éternité l'arcane, monumental amour, mausolée à deux, sereine effusion, certitude minérale, que le désir n'est pas moins fort pour être pétrifié. Ô gardien du grain et des mystères, on vous croirait calme, comme deux pays frères, qu'une frontière au lieu de diviser à côte. Méliane vos bras à la taille du roi, une main en convoitise de ceux qui sous le pagne bat, l'autre pointe d'aile, rameau de palme, à effleurer, sans hâte ni effet, du poignet divin, l'ocre barcane. De mon sarcophage la nuit, tourmentée de trois silices et d'une aire, je vous entends aller, épier et puis rire, vos lèvres dégustant une même et secrète goulée d'air. L'image au mur est écornée, mais l'amour emmuré infini, car, je le sais, vous l'accorde, le geste le plus tendre est inscrit dans la pierre.
I think this is my favorite poem. Pharaoh Queen. This lapidary gesture, which runs from the god's loins to the plain where his navel is offered to slake the thirst of bronze and fawns. You are the one who initiates it. You, the incoming beauty, dame of the dunes, with your contemplative gaze. Nothing will wear it away. Nothing could wear it away. This fecund pose cast in basalt, or maybe in sandstone, modeled after you, madam, lover, sister, idea, goddess, you who claim its omnipotence and radiance in the desert. Modeled after you, I said, and after the one who resembles you. 1 foot set back, you're conjoined as if to help him carry fame's burdensome light. You adopt his eternity's secrets. Monumental love, a mausoleum for two. Serena fusion, mineral truth that desire won't weaken when petrified. Oh, keepers of grain and mysteries, one might think you peaceful as two twin lands that border connects instead of divides. But your arms are lianas around the king's waist, one hand lusting after what beats under the loin cloth, the other a wing tip, a palm leaf, grazing without haste or artifice the divine wrist over Barcan. From my sarcophagus at night, racked by 3 sackcloths and a shirt of hair, I hear you, I too, chattering, then laughing, your lips tasting the same secret gulp of air. The poster on the wall is dog-eared, but immured love is boundless, because I know and agree. The most tender gesture is heart and stone.
Yeah, I know that one. The next poem is based on the folk of arts from Viva. And artist is Alice Martinez Victor, who is part of what we call the School of Paris. Her dates are, her dates are 1911. 1911, I knew how to type it. 1911 to 1996. I'm sorry about that. And this work of artist is 1970.
Survivre selon Alice. Pour Alice Martinez Richter, en hommage. Dans ce pays sans merveille, dans ce paysage à penser, jamais à la journée ne suffit sa peine, mais à moisson si vaine, esprit plus fécond. Tout drus, ils ont planté leurs talons dans ce limon déprivé de son fleuve ancien. Son chevalet, elle y plante en sorte d'esquiver, qui biaise la vue, la perspective et ses lois. De plein fouet, donc, ces trois hommes en révérence, deux crêtés de beaux tissus, le troisième, tête nue. Ils sont au ventre creux et nuque roide, tout attrapés à leur cueillette quotidienne. Fils, ficelles, lacets, cordages, cordelles et raies, ces nases de fortune pour draguer au rivage un simple et moindre enfer. Son geste s'arrondit pour décrire leurs séquelles, la cadence des cordes, de leurs mains le solfège. On demande des quatre qui est le moins expert, et puis les autres debout au loin, vaquant à leurs affaires, jetant à volo leur rire, non leur filet. Survivre, dit-elle, jamais ne tient qu'à un fil.
Survival according to Alice. Homage to Alice Martinez Richter. In this land without wonder, in this landscape of thought, never has the day enough trouble of its own, but a poor harvest makes for a fertile mind. Upright and close, they planted their heels into the silt deprived of its ancient river. There she plants her easel, eluding perspective and its laws that distort the view. Front and center, these three reverential men, two with caps of beautiful cloth, the third bare-headed. They are sunken bellies and unbowed necks, caught up in their daily catch. Thread, string, shoelace, rope, cord, and web is a makeshift net to dredge to the shore, a simple and lesser evil. Her strokes become round to capture the row, the cadence of strings, the solfege of their hands. Who of the four, one may ask, is the least experienced? And then the other standing in the distance, going about their business, throwing their laughter, not their fishing nets, to the four winds. Survival, she says, always hangs by a thread.
We're going to stop for a moment and talk about these poems as well, because they're expressive. So, first of all, I want to know what attracted you to read to Menhore. What is it about him and his wife, which was the inspiration?
Okay, so maybe defining phrases quickly. This is a commentary on a piece of art. This commentary this commentary just a part of a fiction piece or poetry piece, or the entirety. We think of the Shield of Achilles, for instance, for example, of an insertion into a longer poem. So I'm one of the many viewers who have been over the centuries and told by this dyad. It's a monumental sculpture composed of two human-like figures bound by a meaningful relationship. And this piece is unfinished in the sense that their name is not engraved and is not carved on the basis of the sculpture. So if Menpore is easily identified, there have been various interpretations for the female figures. So she could be a sister, she could be an idea, a concept, she could be a wife. And the most recent scholarship seems to indicate that she was a queen mother. But as to me, I prefer to see in her mentor as a lover. And what attracted me to this piece is the serene assurance of those two characters in their togetherness. And what struck me even more is the formidable agency of the female figure. She is making sure that the king's body is balanced as she's pushing it forward at the same time. She's looking for straight while the pharaoh himself looked a little bit on the side. So that makes her a much more predominant figure. And describing this piece has been, this is your favorite poem. It was the most difficult for me in the collection to write. And once it was written, I said, okay, I'm almost there, right? Because I was also after another question, why is it that I had brought to my house and put on the wall a reproduction of this piece? Why is it that this piece inhabited so artfully my home that is otherwise unremarkable? And I came to the conclusion that the piece had a kind of prophylactic purpose, warding off a love that would not be as strong as the stone in which those two are carved, not as long-lasting as the tender gesture of the woman.
Wonderful, and thank you for pointing out the post, because that's really the part that I was getting at. So now, we have time for one more call. Not really, I have questions. Questions? Because we just wanted to find out the relationship Alice Martinez and Richter, because to me, she is, this is special for you.
I think Marion thinks we should do it on board to Q&A, because we have to.
Yeah, you have to be there soon. Right, very quickly, can you tell us your relationship with Alice? She was your teacher.
Oh, no. Yeah. So I knew Alice Martinez Richter as my art teacher in high school. What I didn't know at the time is that she was she was a fabulous expressionist painter, one of the first women to receive the Prix de Rome, and in fact she received it twice. And she also traveled extensively in Africa. Here, what interested me, first of all, the poem is a gesture of homage to her, but this is also a poem that is interested in the gesture of those fishermen, the way she represented them. So they are, sort of pulling up their net, and this image conjured up for me the mythological fates that measure and cut the thread of life. So all this imagery came together and is at the basis of this poem.
Thank you, because it's important you know that she won those prizes. This is an amazing artist who's I just, we should be, we're going to questions and answers straight away. Have any questions and answers, for us? Any questions, answers from, Louis and Nancy? Anyone, please? Yeah, let's do another call. It's coming up. All right. We have one here. Appel.
Appel d'air. Irais-tu convoiter, maudite, de ton prochain jusqu'au passé révolu? Mélancolie, ce sixième sens. Non, l'appétit des choses en son reflux laisse déjà aux cygnes immense plage, et je m'en vais retournant un à un, quitte à y perdre l'onyx de mon ongle, ces rochers gluants où l'algue mousse. Tant de secrets saumâtres hantent les marées basses. Mais au vrai, le coquillage à mon oreille apposé ne bruissera jamais que de l'écho attendu de mon sang retourné. À qui veut entendre, captive de la nacre, l'intraitable voix océane, un poème, toujours, sera meilleur qu'on.
This one also is my favorite. It's the first common book, and the New York Review of Books published it too. So we're very excited that it was recognized there. Column air. Accursed, would you go as far as to covet your neighbor's long gone past? Melancholy, this sixth sense. No, the appetite for things ebbing already leaves a vast beach for the signs, and I go and turn over one by one, at the risk of losing the onyx of my fingernail, these slimy rocks where seaweed froths. So many brackish secrets haunt the low tides, but surely the seashell I hold to my ear will only ever rustle from the expected echo of my blood flowing back. To anyone who wants to hear, mother of pearls captive, the intractable ocean voice, a poem will be always the best come.
One more? Yes? All right. One more. Okay, yeah.
Morts en guerre. Tapageurs, ils se pressent à la palissade qui balle entre notre fief et le leur. Armés sans ombre, sans chef, et sans plus d'uniforme qu'un pagne mangé, qu'un linceul mûr, c'est en vagues drues qu'ils s'en viennent déferler. Les uns brandissent à deux mains un mousquet tout rouillé, d'autres bardés encore d'amulettes affûtent leurs coupe-coupe aux pierres aiguës du chemin. Dans la foule, un gosse qui ploie sous le poids mercenaire d'une mitraillette s'arrête pour gratter parfois son ventre difforme parcouru par les temps. Et tandis que leur griot bègue entonne un péant perdu, qu'on se le dise et qu'on le sache, il n'y a que la mort qui tue. Voilà qu'ils saccagent nos rizières, souillent nos puits et emmusquent nos greniers. C'est la solde de l'oubli qu'ils exigent avant de s'en retourner au bivouac dans une clairière du bois sacré.
The warring dead one. Rowdy, they push against the fence that swings between our realm and theirs. Army with no shadow or leader or uniform, save for a ragged panya, a worn-out shroud. They come surging in thick waves. Some brandish rusted-out muskets with both hands, while others, adorned with amulets, sharpen machetes on jagged rocks from the roadway. In the crowd, a boy buckling under the mercenary weight of a submarine gun sometimes stops to scratch his misshapen belly crawling with horseflies. And while their stuttering Cleo sings a lost paean, let it be said and known, only death kills. Here they come, looting our rice fields, polluting our wells, and leaving our granaries reeking of musk. They demand the wages of oblivion before heading back to the camp in the sacred woods glade.
Right. Any other questions? Mine is going to be, well,
Yes, Brian. I noticed when you were French, there were dedication people on some of the poems or just something, not in the English. Is there a reason for that?
I was sitting down.
Ah.
If you'd like to talk about who your poems that are dedicated to, that would be.
They are dedicated to a number of different people. Sometimes, for instance, for sugarcane, which is based on a story that a friend of mine told me. The dedication came as I was writing the poem because some of the ideas that I presented reminded me of similar texts. So, for instance, the description of the cane, what about Jean Toomer, for instance, and of course. Because the story is about the plantation, sugar cane plantation in Césaire and Edouard Glissant came to my mind. So maybe you can read this dedication so that you get some idea of what.
We're looking at Marianne. Okay. It's a fascinating story where the sugar cane comes alive out of the ground and they hack at it and it comes into 7 pieces, running and chasing their friends down the hills because that used to be a sugar cane plantation, and the haunting history of slavery that was right there. But the dedication is for Aimé Césaire, Édouard Glissant, and Saint John Pels, clairvoyants visited by the unpenetrable. They will have sorted through messages for us, shedding light on some, culling what's keep. For Jean Toomer, without a doubt. For Eva, of course.
That's lovely.
There are books. There are books on sale if anyone has not read it yet. And thank you so much. This is an absolutely magnificent, beautiful taste of your work and of your views.
Thank you for the way.